Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm great.
How are you?
What's going on, buddy?
I'm good.
How's your morning?
So far, so good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Starting the press for the new book?
Yes.
Yes.
The Today Show this morning and a couple of Connecticut radio stations.
Nice. And you do a radio show yourself, right?
Yes, I do.
It's probably a little different than ours.
I was on Air America when that closed down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ring of Fire,
Yeah.
which is my show. It's been about 40 markets.
Wow.
So, Eric,
Despite this voice.
Yeah, what's going on with the voice?
You sick?
No, I have my voice is permanently injured.
From what?
From it's a thing called spasmodic dystonia. It's a neurological disorder, and I got it when I was 42. I had a very strong voice before that.
Yeah.
But it's not supposed to get worse. That's the good news.
How does it get to that point? At 42, what happens? That it just pops up?
They don't know what causes it.
They don't.
They don't know. They think there's a genetic component, but it's not. My throat is not damaged. It's neurological signals that are coming from my brain to my throat are causing my larynx to seize up. And there's a treatment for it. I don't know if we want to go into all this, but I get Botox shots every 4 months right through my throat into my voice box.
That's got to hurt.
With no wrinkles.
So, do you feel your throat tightening up, or do you don't even notice it?
It's uncomfortable.
It is.
Yeah, but it's,
What are you going to do?
What it is. There's, I have a cousin who lost a leg, so I think about him and think I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah.
So if you were a singer in a band, your career would have been over at 42.
Yeah, I'm tone deaf, so that was never an option.
Right, that was...
Can you whisper?
Yeah, does that
I
get
can
you?
whisper, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, and then my voice just... Actually, when I got this, it came on gradually, and for a long time, and it makes my voice tremble, so it sounds like I'm about to break into tears. So I was getting letters from people who saw me on TV saying, oh, it's so great that you can show your feelings, and that, and mainly from women. And I was thinking, for every woman who wrote me, there was probably 10 guys out there who were saying, listen to this crybaby.
This guy sucks.
I would imagine the ladies would enjoy that, though, thinking that you're an emotional guy. So.
I can't watch myself on TV, and
No.
I've never heard my radio show.
Really? You just don't want to deal with it?
I can't stand listening to my voice.
I'm the same way. I don't like listening to anything I've done or whatever. It's like, but if you wrote something, it's easy to read stuff that's written for some reason, like the editing process. But to re-listen to something, it's torture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone with that. I think most people don't want to hear their own voice.
Yeah, or mine.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, I believe that.
I can I ask a question that's all, because you're a Kennedy.
We're going to talk about this book at some point.
Of course, we're going to definitely talk about it.
no.
That ties in with this. Can I ask? I'm not a conspiracy guy. I don't think there was a conspiracy. Why are there still documents that are sealed? I'm just curious, and I just thought of asking you that in the JFK assassination.
I don't know why they keep sealing those documents, but
Yeah, what could possibly
I don't
be
think
in
that
there?
it's some giant government cover-up. I'm just wondering, why? I just wonder, what is that for? What?
well, I don't know. I mean, I don't. I mean, my father's attitude towards it was that the Warren Commission report was a shoddy piece of work, and I think he would have. In fact, he made a statement at UC Davis just before he was killed, where he was asked by a student whether he would reopen the investigation if he were elected president. And he paused for a long time because it was an issue that was emotional for him to deal with, and it was also politically tricky for him to deal with. But then he just quietly said yes.
So I've never heard that before. So he felt that it was a shoddy piece of work, and would he have reopened it, do you think, because he felt there was something else to it, or he just felt that certain...
Well, I think it defies, that if you look at the evidence that's accumulated up till now from, 1 million documents being released, that the idea that it was a lone gunman is pretty hard to swallow.
Well, it's interesting to hear from you because I've actually
Sure.
gone full circle. I always thought it was a conspiracy, and then and Vincent Bugliosi wrote a book, and I always thought, like, wow, it does seem like it was just Oswald, but to hear you saying that, okay.
There's a very
holds
good
a
book.
little more weight when it comes from
Sure.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
There's a very good book by Jim Douglas called The Unspeakable. It's a really strong and scrupulous distillation of the evidence to date of all of the evidence that's accumulated over time on the issue, and it's a very persuasive argument.
Okay. On the unspeakable.
What things do you think would have been different if that assassination hadn't happened?
You know what?
Sorry.
Are we going to have any time to talk about this book?
Yeah.
No time at all.
We're out of time.
Yeah, we're out of time. Get out of here.
Of course we will. Here's what I know about the with Michael Skakel being convicted. It's weird. There's something about it where I didn't know much about the case, and I would watch little snippets of it, and it tapped into that thing where, as just a viewer, you wanted to see somebody powerful or prominent get in trouble, and I'm wondering if that's part of what drove them to go after him so hard.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the overarching themes of this book is that the press interest in this book was a mile wide and an inch deep. There were 401 reporters that were certified to cover the trial, and yet there was only one, who was Leslie Stahl, who was willing to look beneath this kind of flimsy orthodoxy, official orthodoxy, this narrative that it was the murder was committed by an elite, effete member of the Kennedy family who then used power and connections to escape the consequences of his crime. It was an attractive. It was an attractive narrative. It was minted originally by Mark Furman and Dominic Dunn for their own purposes, and the press never looked beyond it.
Do you think their own purposes were money, or do you think they had an ulterior motive after money?
Furman at that point had lost the OJ trial, and he had been convicted of perjury. He was ejected from prohibited from ever doing police work again in this country. So he needed to resuscitate his career. And he did that by saying, I'm going to solve this unsolved crime. He said from the beginning that the only reason people would buy his book is if he blamed it on, somebody who could be called a Kennedy, which Michael Skakel is not a Kennedy. I never knew Michael Skakel and no member of my family did, except for my mother, until 7 years after this murder was committed. We never knew the Skakels growing up. So the Skakels were a right-wing carbon Republicans, and they were estranged from my family. They supported Nixon 1960 election. They had worked against my father in 1968. They were very funny people. In fact, George Skakel, who is Michael's uncle, and I tell this story in the book, during the 1960 inauguration, my mother got about 20 tickets for the Skakel family, very, top shelf tickets right in front of the reviewing stand. And George Skakel gave all of those tickets to inebriated hobos in downtown Washington to show his disdain for the new president. So those guys were sitting in the stand in the front row seats surrounding Red Fay, who is my uncle's best friend, who was wondering, who are these guys? The Skakels had this long history of they were much wealthier than the Kennedys. They had their own family gestalt and a lot of pride, and they had very little to do with the Kennedy family. The blaming it on Michael Skakel was the idea of Mark Furman, and he hatched a really implausible plot about how Michael could have committed the crime.
Wait, so had he not been implicated before that?
Michael Skakel, no, he had never been a suspect.
It was Furman.
Yeah. His brother Tommy had been a suspect, and the primary suspect was the Skakel's tutor, who was a guy called Kenny Littleton, and there's a chapter on him in this book, and he was a really crazy guy who was implicated in around 20 serial killings of young blonde girls in places where he had lived. And so he became the primary suspect, and he had very, very odd behavior after this crime, and he was arrested on multiple times and was in and out of mental institutions and drug rehabs for the rest of his life. Michael was never a suspect, but Furman made him a suspect by writing a book about him, but Furman wrote the book in 2 months. It was not well researched. It's filled with errors. Even the police say that it's filled with errors on almost every page, glaring errors. And Michael was 11 miles away with 6 eyewitnesses at the time the murder was committed. For a variety of reasons, there was a corrupt cop in Greenwich named Frank Garr who leapt on Furman's bandwagon. And as I show, he suborned perjury. There was no evidence against Michael, no physical evidence. There was no
DNA or anything.
No DNA, no fingerprints,
right.
Nothing. So the only way to convict him was to find a confession. Of course, he had never confessed, but this cop suborned perjury from 3 witnesses by essentially offering them $100,000 reward money to perjure themselves. And we now have, and for the first time, I published the transcripts of Frank Garr's discussions with those witnesses in this book that have never been seen before.
Who was funding the $100,000 that was given to these people?
Mrs. Moxley offered a $100,000 reward, but for a variety of reasons, Frank Garr was became the liaison between the public and the reward money. So he was able to, because he was running the case, he was able to decide who was entitled to that reward.
Wow.
And he used that money, as you'll see in this book, to bribe these witnesses to perjure themselves.
So what did they say, the witnesses?
So they said that they heard Michael Skakel confess to the crime. Initially, when he asked them, they said no, he never confessed. And then he said, well, he essentially says, and you have to read it, but I have a $100,000 reward. Why don't you think about this over the weekend, whether you want this money? And then one of the witnesses, the key witness over the weekend, came back on Monday and said, look, I really need the money. I just lost my job from a shoulder injury. And, Frank Garr said, well, then, you know how to do it.
Was Furman privy to the same transcript that you're privy to? Like, did he ignore that? Or
Furman never even went that deep. I actually hired a private investigator who helped me investigate this, and I tracked down the people who actually killed Martha Moxley. I found them through a high school yearbook. One of the things that happened is Michael had a classmate who was named Tony Bryant, who was a cousin of the Lakers star, Kobe Bryant.
Oh, wow.
And he came from a very prominent family, New York family. His brother also played for the Mavericks. And he was a star athlete at Brunswick School, where Michael's classmate. He left Brunswick, went to New York in 1974. Went to New York City and went to public high school there for half a year. He became friends with the 2 men in that high school who ended up murdering Martha Moxley. He brought them. One was an African American, the other was Caucasian. He brought them to Greenwich that night. They planned the murder. They picked up golf clubs from the Skakel lawn. And then, as they were a few minutes before they murdered Martha Moxley, Tony Bryant decided he didn't want any part of this and took a train back to New York. 2 days later, they confessed the crime to him, and over the next 3 months, they gave the details of how they killed her. And he told his mother, who was a very prominent woman in the film industry. She was one of the first African Americans ever to win an Oscar, and the first women to win an Oscar in her category. And she told him, you are black. You brought these boys to Greenwich. You are going to get blamed for this crime, and you're going to go to jail if you ever talk about it. And she told him to separate himself from those boys. She sent him to school in Texas and to never speak of it again. And when I reached him, when I found him, I said to him, I got him on the phone. I said to him, "This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I am Michael Skakel's cousin." And there was dead silence for about 6 or 8 seconds. And then he said to me, "I've been waiting for 27 years for this phone call."
Wow.
And then he told me what happened over the course of 6 more phone calls. And then we went down and videotaped him in Florida. He agreed to be videotaped, but he kept backing out of the videotapes, and finally he showed up, and then he told the whole story of what happened.
And let me ask you,
I tracked down the 2 killers. He only knew their first names, which were Adolf and Burr. And I tracked them down through using a yearbook that I got from Charles Evan Hughes High School, and one of them was named Adolf Hasbrook, and the other was Burton Tinsley. And Burton Tinsley is living in Portland, Oregon. Adolf Hasbrook is living in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I called them up, and I spoke to them on the phone, and I tape recorded surreptitiously those conversations, which is legal in New York State. And they admitted being in Greenwich that night. They admitted knowing all of the characters, and they did not admit to the crime, but they kept changing their story. And then when we subpoenaed them to testify, they both took the Fifth Amendment.
Right.
Is
Now,
there any? Oh, sorry.
I just want to ask, when you were talking to Tony, what was the motivation to kill her?
Adolf Hasbrook had met her had seen Martha Moxley on several earlier occasions, including a Sacred Heart dance, a mixer that Tony had brought him to. And Martha actually mentions in her diary in September of 1975. And he had become obsessed with her. And he talked about nothing but her. And kept pleading with Tony to take them back to Greenwich because he wanted to be with Martha Moxley. And he said what they said repeatedly is he wanted to take her caveman style, which according to Tony meant hitting her over the head, dragging her in the bushes, and then sexually assaulting her.
Wow.
Now, was there any physical evidence? You said obviously none against Michael, but was there any at the scene that if these guys did be forced to testify, or they could take blood or hair, or was there zero physical evidence left at the scene?
There was the police were incredibly sloppy. That Greenwich police had a 147-man police force, and not one of them had ever investigated a mere murder before this murder occurred. So they did a lot of mistakes. They lost the golf club handle that had been protruding from Martha's body. That was lost. There was a lot of other evidence lost. There was a bloody pair of pants that was a size 36 waist. Michael Skakel was a size 28 waist. There was a bloody pair of size 13 sneakers. And these guys were huge. Both of them were over 6'3", 6'4", and weighed 250 pounds. And they were athletes, and they were capable of breaking a golf club, which is another story, But you asked about the physical evidence. The most important physical evidence was 2 hairs that were found on Martha's body. One of those hairs was described as negroid. It came from a black person. Nobody was ever able to explain that. And the other was from an Asian. Now, Burton, or had Asian characteristics, quote unquote. Adolf Hasbrook is African American, and Burton Tinsley is Caucasian, but is described as having either Asian or American Indian blood because, from his appearance.
So they still have those hairs, or they've been lost too?
No, they destroyed those hairs while testing them, and there's no DNA, which of course. They found actually many hairs on the body. Those were the 2 hairs that were identified. The rest of them were all lost.
So he originally gets convicted just from that guy saying, "I heard him confess," and that was it.
Yeah, that's
basically
the only thing that they had was these 3 confessions. Which, if you read the book, they're not. One of the guys, was just like a low-bottom junkie and a career criminal who was offered the $100,000 to testify against Michael. He didn't come forward on his own. He was found because he was high, and he called a radio station and said, in Rochester, New York. His name was Coleman, and Coleman actually Coleman testified Michael in the pretrial hearing and at the grand jury hearing, and in both cases, one of them he was going through cold turkey. He changed the story every time he told it. He said at one point Michael had confessed 6 or 8 times, another time just once. He changed it every time he told it. When he testified in front of the grand jury, he had just done 25 bags of heroin. He testified to that. And just before the trial, he overdosed and died. So he could not be called to the trial. But the judge ruled that the prosecutors could use his earlier testimony, and they got actors to play him, and they got a very buttoned-down prosecutor to play him on the stand. And the jury said afterwards that person had such credibility that that was one of the primary reasons.
Wow.
One of the things you guys will be interested in that I found from Michael Baden, which was Michael.
The coroner, you mean?
Well, the coroner. The criminalist. Michael Skakel was a tiny kid at that time. He had not. He was just reaching puberty. He was he weighed 120 pounds. He had I think a 28-inch waist.
Yes, lean.
He was he looked like a little girl if you see the pictures of him in the book. Michael Baden said that it's almost impossible, and I have a whole section on murders with golf clubs in this book, that in all of his career, 40 years career, as having seen many, many crimes that involved murders with golf club, he had never seen one broken. And that in one case, a mafia capo was beat to death in a used car dealership in New Jersey, and that he was beat to death with golf clubs, and that the concrete floor was chipped and cracked. And the head was slightly dented, but the golf clubs never broke. And that in another trial, 2 mafiosos were testified that they had been taught by a seasoned killer to always use golf clubs because baseball bats break, but golf clubs never break. So you would need tremendous power to be able to break a golf club in 2 places, as this one was broken. And Michael, of course, the principal exculpatory evidence is that Michael was 11 miles away with 5 eyewitnesses at the time the murder was convicted, and he couldn't possibly have committed the murder. There were 8 eyewitnesses at the house who never saw Michael at the house where the murder was committed. And they all saw him leave, but he didn't return until 11:20, which was an hour and 20 minutes after the murder was committed.
They're saying you got to go, but really fast. Michael Skakel did over 10 years in jail. He's out now.
Yeah.
And he's waiting for the Supreme Court to decide if they're going to try him again. Is that true?
That's right. The Supreme Court is either going to... He was released on a habeas corpus petition because his counsel was ineffective. Because the judge said his imprisonment is unconstitutional because the counsel is so ineffective. The state has appealed that. He's been now out for 3 years. He wears a Lindsay Lohan bracelet on his a GPS bracelet, and if the court rules against him, if the court rules for him, he will be retried, and most likely, unless the prosecutors come to their senses and prosecute the real murderers. If they rule against him, he will serve out the rest of his term, which is 25 to life.
Well, this book will help that, certainly.
Yeah, it's called Framed, Why Michael Skakel Spent Over a Decade in Prison for a Murder He Didn't Commit. I have one final question. If there is a retrial, is that guy willing to, is the guy you spoke to who said he was waiting 27 years for that phone call, is he willing to come and testify?
He will definitely testify if they offer him immunity, which is what they should do.
Okay.
But at this point, he's saying, I'm taking the fifth if they offer him immunity, but he already told his whole story on tape, and that tape is admissible. So, we don't need him to testify, sure. But an honest prosecutor would offer him immunity and then, prosecute the 2 guys who actually murdered Martha Moxley.
Well, we just got this book last night, which is why we didn't read it, but this seems fascinating. So, good luck to you with this, and hopefully now that you've turned me around on this.
I want to say the book was embargoed. Nobody was allowed to see it till today. So
okay, cool. I'm glad I didn't lie.
You have a written excuse for not doing your homework.
It sounds like like it's going to be a fascinating read, though.
Thank you so
Hey,
much.
thanks, guys.
Yeah, Robert
It was
F.
really
Kennedy
fun.
Jr.
Thanks, Rob. Nice meeting you.
You want to wrap up, Jimmy? We're good?
We can come back and do it if you want.
We'll come back and wrap up. Stay there. Oh my God! What just happened in the studio? Oh wow! I hope you're still tuning in.
So
we have
close.
Robert.
Wow.
E-Rock.
I'm stunned.
I love you. And I'm telling you,
whatever. That was wrong.
I'm
That
telling
was
you,
terrible.
you had the worst timing probably I've ever seen.
So close.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just is opening up about the Kennedy assassination. He's convinced that JFK was absolutely done in by a lot of different, how would you say it? Different entities.
Different forces. Yeah.
Different forces. And he's really getting into it. And he's like, fuck the rest of my press. He's really in the moment. He's telling us. And then E-Rock out of nowhere goes, 1 minute, we're back. 1 minute, we're back. And then Robert F. Kennedy Jr. goes, anyway, and walks out.
Take care, guys. Now, I know we have a job to do, and E-Rock has a responsibility.
But at that point, Travis would just end the show. Fuck it.
The nephew
I mean-
of JFK is talking, the son of Robert Kennedy, the attorney general at the time, is talking about the murder and what might be a play. And again, a lot of it was stuff we'd already heard.
But
to
it was
not read
beyond
that and
fascinating.
go, like, maybe we should just go to a bit.
You'll probably have another chance to talk to a Kennedy. about
Or just end the show at that point. Who cares?
Like,
We
like,
were just coming back for
literally end the
stupid
show.
plugs. We were just coming back for stupid plugs. Your timing was unbelievable.
I've never seen it. I mean,
and his voice is shitty, so he's kind of like he's
But it
struggling
cleared
to
up.
try to tell us.
he
and-
did have other press to do,
Right.
and he wasn't going to stay for an hour. But the fact that he was really into
That was
talking about
very
it.
engaging.
His voice got very clear there for a second.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy, does he have a
It
lot
was
of people
almost
to
like
blame.
it was almost like you're ready to have a threesome with two tens, and your friend walks in, and goes, "Hey, your wife called. The kids are crying. She wants you home."
And
the
all
girls
we hear is-
and the girls walk away.
All we hear is 1 minute and you're back. And, Robert F.
And the
Kennedy
chicks just
Jr.
leave.
Picked that as his he's got to get out of here. And
Yeah,
just
like,
literally
literally-
walked out without saying goodbye.
It's like when there's snow everywhere and you choose to drink piss, brother. That's what it's like.
I think he was a bit insulted,
No,
actually. how he left.
I just told him, hey, so he goes, we had to leave anyway. He said goodbye. And,
Right.
but
But he was talking about the CIA and oh
This
my
is-
God,
this is not
and
just
Bay
someone
of
who knew-
Pigs and all the wow.
Yeah. Johnson. He's Lyndon B. Johnson.
Alan Dulles.
Yeah.
Who talks
E-Rock.
about Alan Dulles? He's talking about Alan Dulles.
He's talking
Do you
about
understand how
airport
terrible
names.
that was?
I don't care.
You should care.
No, either do it on the air or don't say we're coming back. And if you want to continue a conversation during the
No,
break,
no, you
then
have
just
to-
say to wave it
you
off
have
and say
to-
we're done.
Sometimes
We're talking
in
about
life,
the JFK
Sometimes in
assassination.
life you have to realize that you fucked up, and not. I know that technically you have a job to do.
I'm not saying I didn't fuck up
Then
here,
that's
but
all
I'm
there is.
also not saying I don't
to not
care why
understand.
you're upset on that.
I think
You
he was-
should understand. You should care to understand what the implication of Robert Kennedy's son.
Right.
Really discussing the Kennedy assassination.
Right.
Things that he's not saying publicly. To not understand. Hey, this is a moment that was not planned.
He actually said to us, "I would never say this on
You
the
see,
air."
because I guess he doesn't want to go down the rabbit hole publicly.
But certainly we would discuss the conversation we were having with him. I felt like he was getting to the moment where he was going to say, "I feel like blank did this,"
Yeah.
and, and then all I hear is 1 minute and you're back.
Because you have been saying 2 minutes. 1 minute, we're back.
He had beautiful eyes, too.
Gorgeous eyes.
I'm
Yeah, like
stunned.
fucking gems.
I'd love to have one of his eyes, dude.
Yeah.
I'd put one of his eyes in my mouth, bro. It was beautiful.
And you couldn't have gotten to say that. This wasn't like a typical thing where, hey, it was an actor talking about that girl he fucked. This was one of those things where, again, he doesn't want to say it all publicly because he probably doesn't know
Yeah.
who killed him. He wasn't speculating on who killed him. It wasn't like it wasn't that like he was about to go. And I think it was
Right.
But it was just the idea that a guy this close to that event and that this involved in it with this much knowledge of it was saying things that I hadn't been thinking. So I was certainly willing to listen to it.
Oh my God! You got a Kennedy talking about his uncle's
No, not a
assassin-
Kennedy. Robert Kennedy
Right,
Jr.
Well, he did preface, "That's my uncle." So.
Yeah.
He said, "My uncle."
Like
my
he was about
uncle's
to
dead.
pull like some black and white photos out of his breast pocket. That's what it seemed like.
Do you know what it's like to hear someone say, and so-and-so hated my uncle?
Yes, which he did say.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like, holy fuck, this is amazing. E-Rock
God.
didn't find it amazing. Why didn't you find that amazing?
I think
I don't-
the best thing he should have done is probably whispered in your ear, said, "Hey, we'll come back in a minute."
just coming
so
back-
you could have
Or
made that
just pointed and
decision.
said, what do you want?
we didn't even have to come back. We were coming back just to get dumb plugs in.
Okay.
That was the only reason we were coming back. We could have easily ended the show after the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. interview.
He knows a lot too. You can tell.
Oh, he is angry, man. He's a CIA, Bay of Pigs.
We'll never get that chance again.
Oh, the mafia.
Oh, you could smell the gunpowder on his breath.
Trained killers, Fidel Castro. This is the stuff this guy's telling us.
And again, whether or not he's right or wrong, who knows? Because again, he may not be right just because he's Kennedy's son. But to hear him discuss it,
it's a moment in time you'll never get again.
Never,
ever.
I would have blown off the rest of the day. Everything
Without
else
a doubt.
had been on hold.
That's a moment
to
where you got
continue that conversation.
And his cologne too. Do you smell his cologne?
You have to
I was
look
too
at
busy
that
looking into his
and hear
dreamy
that
eyes.
and know that there's
Dreamy.
something
Whirlpools of truth.
You could have played a bit there, and you know that. A bit could have been played there. What you say we were going to come back? Why couldn't you have just played a bit? I don't get it.
Eric, what's up? Why don't you
too.
care?
I mean,
about
how do you
this?
not think of that? I'm not shitting all over you, but I can't wrap my head around it.
Beautiful eyes.
Okay, fair enough. I fucked up. There you go.
But wouldn't you? I don't know. All right. I mean, I would have just at that point said the guy's got this. Fuck it. If Travis ended the show or played a bit, who cares?
Soft voice.
We have a Kennedy.
10:37.
We have a Kennedy talking about his
Murder,
uncle's
everything.
assassination.
No, we don't have a Kennedy. We have Robert Kennedy Jr.
Dude, I
Well, I
was
said
so
uncle.
close.
though,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You
that
could
makes
smell the espionage on him, bro. You could smell it if you were over by here.
Wow.
He wasn't going to, again, we didn't, there's not anything
It
we
was just-
missed
it was just
information.
fascinating.
It was just fascinating.
To hear his take on it.
Yes, to hear somebody that close to it discuss it.
So you could have just ended the show with like a bit and never come back?
The Cubans, the mafia,
Yeah.
trained killers, CIA, Fidel Castro with that voice. And we're just like, we're all just,
And then
none
there's-
of us is speaking. We're
None
just
of us.
staring at the guy.
I was asking him a couple of questions like about this or that.
well, Jimmy was leading a little bit.
but just like
Yeah.
hey, to do, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
let him talk.
Yeah.
And I asked him about Earl Warren. I went to, Earl Warren, talked about Earl Warren. Now, all these names that you know from this thing.
Johnson.
And none of it was said that like we hadn't heard before, but it was still just fascinating to hear.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a moment, man, there's a weird thing that happens where by doing it, like you said, you break a spell. Or you there's these weird moments you have where you're not going to.
He was in the moment.
Something is broken. He knew he had to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he didn't care. He was really enjoying just talking to us about it.
He was
Yeah.
enjoying it. He wasn't saying anything to be quoted for the literally.
It was a special.
You don't have E-Rock to turn the cameras off? That would be hilarious. Because here, 1 minute and we're back. And then Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just walking out.
And he was like, I wouldn't say this on air. That's what he said. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have played anything he said anyway because
Oh,
again,
no,
he was
but-
talking privately.
No, I wouldn't do that to him. But the moment where E-Rock just yells, 1 minute and we're back. And
Yeah.
then this
Don't have
guy
that.
just hustles out immediately and just drops everything he was
Yeah,
saying.
he was right in mid-sentence and he left.
He literally.
Maybe he felt bad, like, because he kind of shut it down when we were interviewing him
Thank
because he wanted
God.
to get to the books. And then he said, all right, off the air, I'm going to tell these
You know what I was
guys."
thinking at that moment, and I'm not even joking. I'm like, thank God Tony Robbins was in here to help Jimmy with his anger issues. I think it would have played out a little
It's not
differently.
even. It's not even anger really. It's more just I don't know how to process it.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at E-Rock. I love E-Rock. I'm just I don't know how to
Look at the
process.
smile on Roland's face.
See, this is why I'm sick. I think it's the best thing that ever happened today.
God. You got to
In a
focus.
twisted way, I think it was. Oh my God!
Nah, it's dumb.
We have the audio.
You going to be okay, Jimmy?
Tools is running.
Oh, can we play? Go listen.
Oh, you do have the audio?
We'll have the audio so we can put it up
So-
the picture.
No, but play right now.
It takes a while to eject.
Oh my God! All right, we'll play it
Wait,
tomorrow.
we have the audio of what?
It's on a totally different computer. It
Okay.
records.
Watch the audio come back
Can we-
all edited
All right,
and
look,
adjusted.
Can we get it tomorrow? But I agree with Jimmy. He was playing. He was talking about this in private, so I don't want to like.
Nothing he said.
Yeah, but I mean, if you beep something or whatever, just I need the setup though of him like in the middle of talking, and then Eric just. We'll figure something out.
Can we just? I would almost rather just play E-Rock saying. I literally don't want to play one. No, I don't want to play 1 second of anything he said in private. Like
Yeah.
not even an incidental word. There's something
Yeah.
violating about it.
All right.
I would rather just have
You just want the drop.
because literally he was saying it so privately that I feel it's a violation, even if it's one word.
Yeah, we just want the audio of your monumental fuck up.
We just all I want is E-Rock.
The 1 minute and then him walking out. And you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like that.
You're
Yeah.
like the Lee Harvey of conversations, bro.
What made it great too was because his voice. So he's talking a little lower because that's how he could have a conversation. And then E-Rock's booming 1 minute and we're back.
Oh, yeah. It was prison. It was prison Shadow. That was Shawshank stuff.
What do you think, Theo? Were you shocked when he popped in with that?
Oh, I thought we were going to get somewhere, dude. I could see the past to kind of float.
Even if we didn't, it was just fascinating.
That was beautiful.
It was one of those moments where you're like, holy fuck, you got,
And he
Robert
felt
F.
different.
Kennedy
You could
Jr.,
tell he
the
felt
uncle
more
of
chill,
JFK.
comfortable.
He felt like he was just talking because we asked a couple of questions where he knew that we had read up on the assassination and we're asking legitimate questions about it.
God.
I mean,
so close,
I
man.
just don't know how to. Certain things in life happen where you're just not sure what to do with it.
Like wrestling, like professional wrestling. I don't know.
That's what Tony Robbins said. Go home and lay down and think of three things that you're grateful for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
am.
bothered by this for 5 hours. See,
Here's
I learned.
Here's what Tony Robbins would say.
I would test the pop quiz.
If I said to Tony, now what do you do in this situation right now? He would say, you have to feel better. Strangle that idiot.
He has a 90-second rule in the house. 90 seconds, you have to move on and get over it.
Does he really?
Yeah, that's what he was saying
Cool.
earlier. Yeah, that's what Tony was saying. If there's family problems,
When's the
people
last time
arguing.
Tony talked to Robert Kennedy about the assassination of his uncle?
Oh, my God.
Wow,
That was-
E-Rock is really in the dumps, so I feel bad now, man.
And why'd you say I don't care at first?
You should care a
Yeah,
lot.
that's really
you
strange
should,
to me.
Not that you should cry about
That's
it.
really strange
but you
to me.
should care. Like you should go, wow, that was something that was kind of really very, very
the
unique.
millennials, he's
no,
a
I didn't
millennial.
read it all.
No, he said I don't care because he had a job to do to get the show back.
Nah, but he
on.
didn't care
Right.
because it was. But that's one thing.
No, Ope's right, because I knew you guys were in the moment, and I knew you weren't going to be paying attention. I knew we only had one break left, so I was pretty much watching Travis the entire time to let you guys
Travis's
know.
fault.
But you
No,
should
it's not Travis's fault at all.
I had plenty of
It's the
stuff ready to go in
intern
case you guys were continuing to talk.
Yeah, well, they should have played.
No, the interns never start the recordings. We
What?
don't have Pro Tools either.
What?
We didn't. Pro Tools was not started this morning, so we don't have the audio of that either.
I told you immediately. What
Why
did I
wasn't
tell
Pro
you? To
Tools
cover
started?
up.
I don't know. I guess they forgot.
Wow. It's the
So wait,
Warren
well,
Commission.
who's supposed to tell the interns to do
Wait,
that?
interns are responsible for turning on Pro
Yeah, they
Tools?
hit record.
And who's supposed to tell them to do that or no?
Well, I was telling them to do it. They didn't do it this morning, but
knew it.
the intern boss is seated right behind you.
How come you didn't tell them to turn it?
Because I didn't think of that. I don't usually deal with the Pro Tools, but I guess it's all our faults.
Cover up.
No, not cover up. It's just I
No,
never
not from
th-
you.
I
I'm
never
just saying
think of Pro
overall.
Tools.
Those Kennedys, everything,
don't know.
immediately the audio's
I'm
going.
not taking blame. I'm getting
Things
the
are
Warren
different.
report going.
Me and Florentine
Figure
are getting haircuts today, aren't we, Florentine?
That's right. I'm paying for mine now.
Get rid of your bangs.
No, Bangs over Brooklyn he's taking me to. That's where I want to go. I want to go to Long Island.
So you told the interns,
Jersey.
and then why didn't they turn it on when you told them to?
Oh, I tell them to start it up every day. There has been some difficulties where they've walked in, they've started, but today they didn't check it at all. So none of it was recorded.
That happens.
See, I want to go watch porn now. This is the problem, man.
Really?
I'm going to go eat breakfast instead.
This will lead you to porn.
I just feel like, you hit some moments in the day. I'll be fine.
Oh my God, that was just beyond amazing how that all just went down.
Beautiful eyes, that guy, though. Do you see that?
Gorgeous. My God, like an infinity pool.
Makes you hate the rich.
I felt like I was in the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck.
You know
Yeah,
what?
you could tell.
Sunken
Here-
ships. He
here-
had sunken ships in his eyes.
I'll be really honest, and it's not. I just Googled Robert Kennedy Jr. discusses JFK assassination. RFK Jr. My father was convinced rogue CIA killed his brother, so he has discussed this before. So it was still a shitty time. No, but I'm saying it wasn't like we had this moment that no one else has ever. It was just interesting to hear him talking.
Oh,
about
I had no doubt that he probably discussed it before, but we were just fortunate enough to have him discussing it to us personally.
But Pro Tools being off, like the fact that
The interns were working on something else this morning.
Of course.
what were they working on?
I think they were working on audio.